Hi everyone, in this video, I will be discussing and showing you my exercise prescription using the FITT format for both cardiovascular condition and strengthening. So here is my exercise prescription for cardiovascular conditioning. As you can see in the table, there are two columns. The first column is the components for FITT principle, which stands for frequency, intensity, time, and type. On the other column is my target based on the FITT principles. So the first component of the exercise prescription is the frequency, and frequency is refers to the number of times the activity is performed. So I am planning to do the training for my cardiovascular conditioning for twice a week or two times a week. So the second component is the intensity, and intensity is refers to the level of vigor at which the activity exercise is performed. Below are the subcomponents of intensity. First is the resting heart rate. In order to get the target heart rate, it is important to take note of your resting heart rate before performing an exercise. For my resting heart rate, I got 62 beats per minute. So the next one is the heart rate reserve. To calculate the heart rate reserve, I used the table provided by our professor to calculate the heart rate reserve. To get the heart rate reserve, we will be basing the maximal heart rate on the fifth column. Since I have chose to perform high intensity training, so my heart rate reserve is 76. Now to get the target heart rate, here is how I calculated my heart rate at high and low interval. There is actually another way to measure the intensity using the Carbonence formula, but here I am only basing the table to get my target heart rate. So we have there 220, which is the maximum heart rate, minus 21, which is my age. Then I subtracted it to my resting heart rate. After that, I multiplied 0.76, which comes from my heart rate reserve at decimal form, plus 62, which is my resting heart rate. So I got 162 beats per minute. Then for the heart rate at low interval, they're almost the same process, but the only difference is that in order to get the heart rate at low interval, the heart rate reserve must be half of its original value. And since I got 76%, so I divided it by 2. So that's why I got 0.3. So after that, now we are now done with the intensity. Let's now proceed to the next component, which is the time or duration of the activity, which also refers to the length of time that the activity is performed. We have three subcomponents of time in an exercise prescription. The first one is the warm-up, stimulus, and the cool-down. To clearly explain you why I got this data, I have here my graph. This is the whole cycle of my cardiovascular training, including the warm-up and the cool-down. The lower section indicates the lower interval, while the upper portion is the upper interval. So for the warm-up, I decided to only have 5 minutes because I guess the maximum warm-up exercise should be 5 to 10 minutes for moderate intensity for both cardio and muscular endurance activities. This is to increase the body temperature and to decrease the potential for exercise muscle soreness. So I put there 5 minutes at low interval for my warm-up exercise. Then for the stimulus, I just added the total number of the duration in the whole cycle, excluding the warm-up as well as the cool-down. That being said, only the high and the low interval is needed to calculate the total duration force time loss. This level is often called the conditioning level of an exercise training. So the total duration for my exercise excluding both warm up and cool down is 32 minutes. I simply add the numbers in each cycle as well as the resting time between them. So I got 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5 that is equals to 20 plus the remaining numbers between each cycle, 4 plus 4 plus 4, which is equivalent to 12. Since I got 20 on the high interval and 12 in the lower interval, so I got the total of 32 minutes. And for the number of cycle, it is clearly demonstrated that there are 4 cycles based on the graph, so that's why I got 4. Now let's proceed to the next components of FITT principles, which is the type of physical activity. The type of physical exercise I have chosen is jogging because it does not require any equipment at all, and aside from that, it is easy to perform and convenient. So far that's only for my cardiovascular conditioning. Now the second exercise prescription that I will be showing you is my muscular resistance training prescription. This kind of training program would help an exercise enthusiast or exerciser to improve the components of muscular strength, endurance, and power. So the first row is my age, and my goal is to improve my muscular strength. And for the volume, I have chosen to perform moderate intensity since my goal is to improve my muscular strength, and I would like to see the efficacy of this training program in the period of time. The next one is the frequency. I am planning to do the physical activity 2 times a week with the duration of 80 minutes, including the warm-up and the cool-down exercise. Of course, before performing any physical activities, it is necessary to do the warm-up exercise. So I have chosen 4 warm-up stretch exercises, and these are the shoulder strangle, overhead arm reaches, hand down spine, and lastly the quadriceps standing. I will not be discussing them individually because I guess you are already familiar with these warm-up exercises. And for the duration, number of sets and repetition, as you can observe, the warm and the cool down stretch exercises are just the same with its corresponding duration, number of sets and repetition. So repetition is refers to the number of times you perform a particular exercise, while set is the series of repetitions performed sequentially. Like for example, in the left column under the exercise component, I have there 8 repetitions. Like for example, in the left column under the exercise component, I have there 8 repetitions of for squats, and since I have 3 sets of squats, that is equivalent to 24 repetitions. But for my warm-up stretch, I am planning to only have 4 sets in each warm-up exercises with only 1 repetition. So below are my chosen exercises for my muscular resistance training program that I have chosen to perform, and these are the following. First is the squat, lunges, push-up, burpees, mountain climbers, set-ups, and curl-ups. I have chosen this type of exercises because they are convenient to perform and it doesn't require any tool or equipment at all. Since I choose moderate intensity, the maximum repetitions for this type of training program is 8 to 12 repetitions per set of exercise, with a rest interval of 2 to 3 minutes between each exercises. In my case, based on my data or chart, the overall total repetition that I am planning to do is 20 repetitions from different exercise combinations with its corresponding sets of 20, which is the maximum total repetition for moderate intensity level. So that's the number of my reps and sets. And for the resting interval, it is very important to allow the muscle to recover. Since this training requires a longer duration time of rest, the ideal time for interval for this training is 2 to 3 minutes in between each sets of exercise. The rest interval between sets depends on your training goal. Now to get the load as percentage for moderate intensity level, we have here the table for our bases and getting the load as percent of 1 RM. For moderate intensity ranges from 67% to 85%. Thus, the minimum is 67% and 85% is the maximum. 1 RM is the maximum amount of weight one can lift in a single repetition for a given exercise. And for the RPE or rating of perceived exertion, this is a scale to measure the intensity level from 0 to 10 by doing the talk test while performing the exercise of your desired intensity level. Scale run from a minimum of 0 to maximum level of 10. This is basically a test using the RPE to rate the intensity while doing the said test ranges from 0 to 10. So we are now at the last part of the exercises prescriptions component, which is the cool down stretch. Of course, it is also important to perform cool down exercise to allow the recovery of our heart rate and blood pressure after the conditioning phase of training. So as you can observe, my cool down stretch is just the same with my warm up stretch. So I guess I will not be discussing it again. Alright, so I guess we are now done. So that's all for today, and thank you for watching.